Now live from Studio 550, it's McGraw in the Morning on the Big 550 KTRS.
Our next guest should win an award from the show. One of the few elected officials who comes on the show every single time we ask him to. Ladies and gentlemen, he's the state auditor for the great state of Missouri, Tom Schweik. Auditor, Mr. Auditor, welcome back to Big 550 KTRS.
Thank you, McGraw. Great to be with you.
You have just completed an audit of the city of Brentwood. Why did you do an audit of the city of Brentwood? This
was a petition audit. The citizens got together and they got about 900 and something signatures that they needed to get me to do an audit. And when we get the requisite number of signatures, we actually by law are required to do an audit. And I like doing the audits based on a petition because that means the voters are really interested in having the audit done.
How many people had to sign this petition?
I don't have the exact number. I think it was a little over 900.
900. Is that because of the size of Brentwood, and if the city of St. Louis wanted it, they would need more signatures?
Exactly. In fact, we got 869 signatures. They needed 15% of the people who voted in the last governor's election. Well, they had 3,871 voters last time. They needed 581 signatures, which is 15%. They got 869.
Gotcha. Okay. The audit you gave the city of Brentwood the poorest rating possible, correct?
Yeah, I don't give out a lot of poors. We do excellent, good, fair, or poor. That's a system we put in place a couple of years ago. It's worked well, and I don't like giving out low grades. But unfortunately, there were 21 separate problems that we identified with the accounting and the accounting controls and the business practices of the city of Brentwood, and we just weren't able to give it a higher grade as a result of that.
Some of the things you found that were most egregious, State Auditor Tom Schweik.
Well, first of all, they weren't bidding out contracts, which is good practice. Competition is obviously great for lower prices, but it's also a requirement of their own city ordinances, so they weren't even following their own laws on that. There were serious problems with overtime. You may remember there were some issues with their fire department charging overtime for work that was not done. There was a settlement that was reached in 2011 about that, but yet we found there still were problems with the timesheets and the way overtime was being calculated. We found problems with payroll and leave records. We found some employees getting additional compensation, which we think was not appropriate, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. They wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars on litigation as a result of not monitoring a couple of tenants in the new project over there, the new development project over there in Brentwood. A couple of them were coding their sales tax wrong, and therefore the bond fund was underfunded, and then there was a big lawsuit. And if there had just been a little more attention, they would have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. And there were also problems with accounting controls, with their vehicles. Their budgets didn't meet state law requirements, and they weren't keeping adequate records of their property.
Yeah, some of these numbers are astounding. You mentioned that bond account was underfunded because of that sales tax miscoding to the tune of $460,000. Then the city had to spend $260,000 on legal fees related to those lawsuits.
Exactly, and not only that, but because they had miscoded the tax receipts, and there was $460,000 missing from the bond account, they had to borrow the money and pay interest on the $460,000 too. That was another almost $14,000. So that's just money like literally down the drain.
Now, was this incompetence or was it illegal or criminal?
It appears all to be incompetence, not intentional misconduct. There was a couple of years ago, there was a city manager who had used a credit card to take advances at a casino on city money, and that was illegal. That was a criminal act. But that was a couple of years ago, and we decided not to rehash that issue. So in terms of new criminal conduct, we did not find any. And that's important to say. Really what you have is a city like Brentwood, a relatively small city that's experienced a tremendous development boom over the past few years. If you look at the things that have gone up in Brentwood, and you've got the Best Buy and the Sports Authority and all these other stores there, and I just think that the city administration hasn't caught up in terms of accounting, management, and financial controls with the increase in size and complexity of the transactions that the city has to deal with now.
Now, as an auditor, in terms of your responsibility to the office, can you make that determination as to whether something was just ignorance and or criminal? And did you have to talk to the Attorney General's office about that?
We usually are able to determine if something's criminal. I mean, since I've been auditor now, we found over 20 cases of public officials literally embezzling money. I mean, just stealing money. That's the number one crime we find. We also find inflated reports, inflated expense accounts, and things like that. We really didn't see any of that here. Everything we saw here was people who just didn't understand that there's a certain level of required in a city that's doing as much business as it's doing, right. And they just weren't operating with precision. We did not find criminal conduct, and so we didn't refer anything to the Attorney General.
So going forward, what does the city of Brentwood, what should they do? What do they have to do?
Well, they've put in, for example, an automated payroll and record-keeping process that should be better on the overtime, on the payroll, on the leave records, on the compensation problems, They've hired some new people. Some of the old people who were part of the problem are not there anymore, and they've done some additional training they've put in place. And they've committed, I'll come back in 90 days. When I give somebody a poor rating, we do a 90-day follow-up. And they've put a corrective action plan in place that, on paper looks good to us. But we won't just take their word for it. We'll come back in 3 months and see if they've really implemented those recommendations.
All right. Any other audits we should be looking forward to in the near future?
Yeah, there's a couple of them coming up. We'll release an audit of the City of St. Louis public schools in about 4 to 6 weeks, which I hope we can talk about when that comes out. And we're also, this is more of a statewide audit, we're looking at abuse of electronic benefit cards around the state, people who are receiving welfare payments, possibly using them for illicit or improper purposes, and that audit will come out a little later on in the year.
Beautiful. When are you going to audit the Ellisville?
Well, that we can only do a city if we get a petition. My authority to audit a city exists only if the governor orders it or if there's a petition. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of the residents there are already circulating the petition.
Because we know that they're paying the public relations firm to listen to this very show.
Yeah. I mean, based on what I've seen, just on the news and people like you reporting it, there appear to be a lot of potentials for conflicts of interest and serious issues. I suspect there'll be a court action as well, but if the city of Ellisville citizens want to get the right number of signatures and get them to our office, we'll do an audit top to bottom, just like we did with Brentwood. And as you know, we did it with University City, Rockwood Schools, Pine Lawn, several Pacific, several St. Louis area political subdivisions. We're happy to do it.
Tom Schweik, why don't you make some more news here on the show? Are you running for governor next time around?
I am running for re-election to state auditor. That's up in 2014. It's the only statewide office that's up. It's the first time, I think, since 1990 that the auditor is at the top of the ticket. And, McGraw, you know as well as I do that the worst thing you can do in politics is look beyond the next election or you'll lose that one. So I'm focused 100% on being re-elected to state auditor. It's a job I like. I've been on with you many times. You can kind of tell I'm enthusiastic about the job. And what happens in the future would only be determined after 2014.
Yeah, but that's not a juicy answer. I want a juicy answer.
Well, how about this? How about if I make a deal with you? If I have a juicy answer, you'll be the first person I call, all right?
All right, that works. That's fair enough. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Schweik, you heard it here first. He'll call me with a juicy answer. Tom Schweik, thank you for joining us. You're always welcome on the show, and we will certainly talk to you when those new audits come out.
Okay, thank you, McGraw.
You got it. Tom Schweik here on the Big 550 KTRS. A Republican, Tom Schweik, from Senator Danforth's office, or worked with Brian Cave for years, and worked at, he's an all-around good guy, and comes on the show all the time. See, I can play nice with politicians when they got nothing to hide. When they got something to hide, then they don't want to come on the show, right? It's not, I'm not the bad guy. But if you don't want to face the music, don't do the crime.